Hello, this video is a tiny snippet into the mind of Anaximander, an incredibly fascinating mind who lived 6 centuries BC before the Common Era. Let me share with you a bit of a preamble. Other than the Greeks, all ancient civilizations, the Babylonians, the Mayans, the Egyptians, the Chinese, believed that the world was made of earth, lots of earth, underneath the heavens, much like in his figure, and that this earth either rested on some structure like pillars or on an entity like the back of a giant elephant or a turtle or anything that would stop the earth from falling. The only civilization that had a completely different understanding of how the world stood were the Greeks. They believed that the world was a rock floating in the sky without falling. The sky had to engulf the rock from all directions. Who's to credit with this ahead of its time conceptualization of the world? Anaximander. This frighteningly intelligent mind formulated ideas that would later be supported by science and strongly defended by philosophies that outlived him and will outlive us. One of the particularities of Anaximander's philosophy is that he calls for skepticism of anything that looks too obvious. We now talk about 4 outstanding ideas from Anaximander's philosophy, a Presocratic philosopher who lived more than a couple of thousands of years ago, yet whose philosophy is strangely anticipatory of a number of ideas modern science has arrived at. As it's sadly the case with the Presocratic philosophers, we don't have access to much of their work, and Anaximander is no exception. He wrote a book entitled On Nature. Unfortunately, the book didn't survive. Only a fragment of it did. A fragment we find in Simplicius's commentary on Aristotle's physics. Other later Greek philosophers like Aristotle and Theophrastus would also refer to Anaximander's philosophy. This video's treatment of Anaximander's ideas is heavily inspired by the works of Charles Kahn and Dirk Couperet. We'll try to focus on 3 poles: the origin of the world, the origin of life and humans, and astrology. Anaximander was the first person to say that the earth was a floating rock in the sky and that the sky above it is also underneath it. You'd be right to wonder, how would anybody infer that the earth floats in the sky? Well, there are pointers. There is the sun that seems to always set in the west and rise the following day in the east. For this to happen, there must be emptiness around the earth. There is the evidence from the North Star and the stars around it. Because the North Star is positioned almost in a straight line with Earth's rotational axis, we see that its position in the sky is fixed. It never changes, but the stars around it move in a circle, and for the stars to move around Polaris, the northern star, there must be space, emptiness. With hindsight, it appears that arriving at the idea that the Earth floats in the sky is as simple as intuitive. Yet impressive civilizations would fail to reach this conclusion. For example, the Chinese civilization, despite all its grandeur, would not conceive of a floating earth before they were introduced to it by the Jesuits in the 17th century. By inferring that the earth floats in the sky, Anaximander uses observation and intelligence and goes against a fundamental truth we experience in our everyday lives. Things tend to fall. Anaximander dares go against this obvious principle by saying that Earth doesn't fall because there is no reason for it to fall. A thing does fall down only if it is dominated by a surface that pulls it towards it. In fact, Aristotle writes about Anaximander's genius observation in the following. There are some, Anaximander for instance, among the ancients who say that the earth keeps its place because of its indifference. Motion upward and downward and sideways were all they thought equally inappropriate to that which is set at the centre and indifferently related to every extreme point, and to move in contrary direction at the same time was impossible. So it must need remain still. This view is ingenious. You see how Aristotle qualifies Anaximander as ingenious, and you'd think Aristotle knows what he's talking about. To arrive at the conclusion he arrives at, Anaximander questions a seeming reality, the idea that it is the natural course of things to fall. Anaximander arrives at the conclusion that an object is drawn downwards only if it is dominated by a surface that pulls it towards it. That's why we are drawn towards the Earth. In the case of the planets, it's not dominated by any surface, so the law of having to fall down only applies to things that are on the surface of the Earth. Anaximander operates on the assumption that up and down are not absolute realities. In the absence of a point of reference, there is no up, no down. To make such impressive connections, Anaximander believes that things are not the way they look to be, and that observation coupled with intelligence could reverse our understanding of the most basic truths. It's the same reflective process that great minds continue to use throughout history to push the boundaries of our understanding of the world. It's the same starting point that allowed Einstein to arrive at the idea of simultaneity by reversing the way we conceive of now. A huge mistake in understanding how the world operates is approaching it through the very limited lenses of our experiences. Instead of using experience, we're better served with using observation and reading. And this is what Anaximander does. So contrary to how we experience reality here, in space, there is no down towards which things are pulled. The Apeiron. When you look at the history of philosophy, the trio that is accredited with instigating philosophical interest in how the world is constituted is made of Thales, Anaximander, and Anaximenes in this order. Thales being a direct teacher of Anaximander, the three philosophers theorized the idea of the first principle as the origin of all things. For Thales it is water, for Anaximander it is the Apeiron, and for Anaximenes it is air. So for Anaximander, the origin of everything is something called the Apeiron. From ancient Greek, Apeiron means either infinite or something unknown. What Anaximander describes by the Apeiron is a substance that is not like any other substance we deal with in our experience of life. So it can neither be air, water, fire, nor anything we know. The Apeiron is a natural substance from which everything in nature is generated, but it doesn't resemble anything in nature. Order that controls every aspect of nature points to the idea that everything in nature, the sky, the forests, the creatures, all come from one and the same substance. You can think of the Apeiron like a grain that grows into a plant, then a tree that has branches, leaves, liquids, fruits, flowers. With the Apeiron, this grain grows into sand, rocks, mountains, humans, and everything. A fundamental takeaway from Anaximander's Apeiron is that nature is not accessible to us in its entirety. Unlike Thales and Anaximenes, who designated elements from within nature as the origins of everything, Anaximander rejects this thought and designates an unknown substance as the origin of the natural world, the origin of life and living creatures. Let me read to you what Anaximander says about the origin of humans. His thoughts are related to us through Hippolytus. Anaximander says, living creatures arose from the moist, being evaporated by the sun. In the beginning, man was similar to a different kind of animal, namely a fish. Anaximander on the origin of life and the appearance of humans. Anaximander says that living beings emerged when the moist was evaporated by the sun, and that initially humans had different forms. They were similar to fish that lived in water. As they developed, those fish-like creatures got out of the water when the land and water started to get warm. Upon moving out of the water, their bodies changed into creatures that could live on the ground. Anaximander refers to the concept of abiogenesis, the emergence of living organisms from non-living substances, the transformative agent here being the alteration of cold and warmth and the evaporation of moisture. Anaximander holds that the emergence of the whole universe is similar to the emergence of humans. It is the result of the interaction between warmth and cold, and it appears there are many similarities between humans, trees, plants, and animals. Here's a summary of Anaximander's ideas and how the universe works. First, adaptation. Adaptation is a strong force that can make one organism transform into another. Second, everything in the universe is originated from one single thing called the Apeiron. Third, the first creative force which gave rise to everything, the planets, the sun, and everything, the stars, was the result of the separation between cold and warmth. This same fluctuation of temperature keeps being a creative force that creates living and non-living organisms. Fourth, the Earth is a rock floating in the sky. It doesn't fall because it is not dominated by any surface to fall to. This is a very brief snippet into the incredible ideas that Anaximander formulated 26 centuries ago. His thoughts were motivated by not taking for granted things that seem to be a certain way. Observation and intelligence are far more penetrative than experience, and it is this same principle that continues to direct some of the sharpest forays in our understanding of the universe. Now, this video has reached its end. Stay observant, dig underneath the obvious, and until we meet again, have a great day.